Good morning, everybody, and lovely to see all of you here. My name is Julian Sparry. I'm the Technical Director of Livetec Systems, and today we want to talk to you a bit about how we are building the future of livestock protection. So Livetec Systems, we've been around for nearly 15 years now and have been known to be involved in major disease outbreaks, clearing up major disease outbreaks on farm. We won't go backwards, we'll go forwards. But we are now looking at the 3 Ps of livestock protection. Having been known for the people that come out and deal with avian influenza and that, we're looking at preparedness, prevention, planning and prediction. And what we mean by that is preparedness. We, as a company, are always prepared with equipment, with staff, with trained personnel to come out and deal with emergencies on farm, whether that's for the government in avian influenza or for other issues that sometimes occur within the industry. We're also, with that experience of working on farm, we are looking at steps to prevent it happening. So we're looking at biosecurity plans, looking at real biosecurity. Why is it that some farms get avian influenza and some don't? And what is that small crack in biosecurity that's letting the disease in? So we write biosecurity plans, we write emergency response plans. We know what happens when animal health comes onto a farm. If you've got a notifiable disease, we know what happens. We know what devastating effect it has on you and your family. So we write those plans. And ultimately, we want to be in a position to help predict where this disease might come through. We have a lot of data collected over the last 3 years. And there's been a lot of epidemiological studies with the flu map project that APHA have led. There's a lot of data now we can look at how that disease spreads across the country. So we are looking at prediction as well. So the key issues that we see coming out of those big avian influenza crises was that it's costing the industry a huge amount of money every time these diseases appear. So looking at preventing it happening is an important part of the work we are doing now, and also taking the lessons we've learned from the avian influenza outbreaks and looking at how this might affect an African swine fever outbreak, getting farmers ready for what might happen with African swine fever were it to come, or possibly when it comes into the UK. And we like to give our advice that we give out is agnostic of products. We're not trying to sell foot dips. We're not trying to sell sprays or chemicals. We are looking at effective biosecurity that works 365 days a year. Looking back over the last 3 years, we can see how the cases of avian influenza have occurred in that huge spike to start with at the normal time of sort of December, and then the following year, as the virus changed, we got that peak in October and a little bit through the summer even, and then all of a sudden the virus changes yet again, and we're down to 6 cases, and everyone becomes a little bit complacent, say it goes off the radar, so I can drop my guard a bit, but that is not going to happen. That we cannot let that happen because the virus will change again and it will come back with a vengeance. We also have collected a large amount of data on wild bird cases, and there's a very comprehensive system within DEFRA now, within APHA, of collecting that wild bird data, and we can see by looking at the pattern of increasing wild bird cases what that can tell us about the potential for virus in your area. And this is something that we have in our app as well. Again, African swine fever is growing. This is only the last 2 years. Last year with wild boar cases, and this year already we've had 1,500 wild boar cases in Europe, and it's spreading westwards. Now, the border controls, where this virus jumps is human activity. Not just, we've got wild boar movements which is spreading across Europe, but those jumps that we've seen across into France and Belgium have been human movements. So it's understandable that this is potentially coming into the UK. So before I go on to tell you what we've developed to help people through with biosecurity, I'm going to introduce James Baxter, who unfortunately went through the process of naming the influenza outbreak up in Scotland, in the north. And he will tell you how the benefits of contingency planning for him helped him through that process.
Thanks, Julian. I know you refer to us as being up in the north, but when we're in Scotland, we're in the deep south of Scotland, where we could not be any further south. And when you look at the map there, you'll see that we are, where's my little machine here? You'll see that we are right in the very southwest, near Stranraer, exactly where the ferry ports are that take the ferries back and forward to Belfast and Larne. In fact, we're only 16 miles away at the closest point. But we're surrounded by sea on all sides, which means that our climate is very temperate. We don't get much snow, we don't get much summer either, so we're warm all the time, I suppose is what you would say. So we, unfortunately, hang on, I'll move on to my next slide here. We have 192,000 free-range hens in 12 sheds. We only farm eggs and energy. So when AI was to hit our business, it stopped everything, including a lot of these renewables. So I'll just tell you a little bit about what happened in our AI outbreak and how it unfolded. It all kicked off on Thursday, the 26th of January last year, 2023. And my wife and myself were away actually for the week or for a few days. And one of my sons phoned to say that there was an issue in one of the sheds. 79 dead hens in one colony, and a lot looking very poorly. Strange, lethargic behaviour. You'll see the symptoms detailed in this slide. We totally different from anything else that we'd ever seen on farm. I mean, we're all used to getting a little bits of mortality here and there, but there was clearly something badly wrong. Up until this day, everything was perfectly normal. The hens were 27 weeks old, flat out, looking good. I made a call to my vet and we sent him off some WhatsApp videos of what was happening in the sheds, collected up the dead hens that were on site at the time, and waited a couple of hours to see what would unfold. Unfortunately, it unfolded into a bit of a disaster. Now, as my job as chairman of the British Free Range Egg Producers Association, I have spent many years explaining to people the benefits of having contingency planning in case AI would strike your farm. It's one of these things like insurance that you should have, but you hope you never need. And unfortunately, I was needing mine now. And we had our contingency plan from Livetec, who I contacted immediately as soon as we suspected it. And I can tell you the advice that we got from Livetec at that time was really invaluable to our operation. We were to cancel all the traffic, all farm traffic, no movements on or off farm, absolutely no exceptions, no feed, no egg lorries, no visitors of any kind until we knew exactly what was going to happen. So I made all these necessary calls, stopped the feed lorries, egg lorries, which were already en route, and everybody else was told to wait where they were. So, and I can say this advice is incredibly important, not just for us as the producer, but it's essential to protect other people down the chain, your egg packer, your supply chain partners, and obviously other farmers round about you from the consequences of the disease spreading. This turned out really to be excellent advice for us and saved us and Noble Foods, who are our egg packer. It saved us a lot of time and a lot of money. But I'll tell you a bit more about contingency planning shortly. So we, after we had obviously sent off all our necessary photographs and stuff to the vet, and we knew that APHA were planning to come along to farm the following day, we went back to consulting our contingency plan. And you can see it lying out on the kitchen table there. We went through the booklets, and we were able to navigate the whole process with the knowledge of what was needed and what was about to happen on our farm, and definitely sped up the APHA process. Because remember, whenever you've got APHA coming on site as a suspect site, they have a huge amount of information that they need to collate at the kitchen table or in your farm office before they're ever able to go on to actually see the chickens, because it's all about containing the disease, which you probably already have. So our kitchen table was covered in piles of paperwork, ready for the government vet the following morning. Everything that APHA could possibly need was already in the plan in great detail, and the government vet was only 1 hour on site the following morning before she had all the information she needed, all the traceability stuff, and we were able to set off to the sheds to go and collect some samples and stuff. We were certainly under no illusions as to the seriousness of what was about to happen. So we awaited for our inevitable results, which came back and confirmed that we were an IP. So we operate a big, modern, tidy, clean site, following all the current protocols for biosecurity. We've got 3 different levels before we ever get near a chicken shed or near a hen. Access into the sheds on each site is from a clean concrete yard. There's a foot dip at that door, obviously, where you enter the outer room, and obviously that's where you have to sign in, tell everybody where you've been, what you're doing, why you're there. Then you'll have to remove your footwear from outside before you can cross over the first of the crossover barriers. Once you do that, and you're actually into the pack room area, which is a sort of intermediate type area. If you're actually going to see chickens at all, you have to then footwear off again, change into protective clothing, change of footwear, and a foot dip on the other side of that door before you can actually get down near any hens. We really felt we could not be any more careful, and we were absolutely sure we had not walked the disease onto our site, because any infected hens were over 100 meters from that outside door. And you'd have to cross 3 biosecurity barriers in order to get to that particular part of the shed. So when APHA were there and had collected the samples, we thought we would go off and see if we could find out how did AI get onto our site? What was the infection point? And this is what we found. We found that pigeons were sitting on the chimney inlet vent above colony 3 of house 7, which was directly above the infected hens. And this was the only place these pigeons actually sat on that whole site, which was a bit of a surprise. None of the other roofs had any birds sitting on them, and the only difference on that particular site is that shed is the only one with solar panels on the roof. That's the only difference we could observe. But anyway, we observed these pigeons for an hour, and they only wanted to perch on that roof, and specifically on those 2 chimneys at the far end, above colony 3 and 4. And I think the real trigger point, these birds, of course, are dropping pigeon poo on top of the chimneys. And unusually for our part of the world, I told you there we're very mild climate, but it was very rare for us to get some snow. And we had 2 inches of wet snow on the 19th of January, which was exactly 7 days before our outbreak. And this would have landed on the chimney, which the pigeon droppings were on, and then melted, potentially dripping some kind of viral soup into the hens underneath. Because this is an inlet fan, it's pulling in 3 cubic meters of air every second. So it's pulling in a lot of air. And that could have delivered this virus like a bit of a viral soup underneath on top of our hens. And as we all know, you need like virtually no virus to make the infection. So exactly 7 days after the snow, our hens were dying, and we certainly believed we'd found the source of the infection. So the following few slides I'm going to show you here are something you don't want to see in your farm. You never want to have that. What you're not seeing in that photograph, though, is the security men. Lots of them turn up to keep the place secure. And then you don't want to see these, which were the gas tanks, because we had permission from the Scottish Government for whole house gassing, which was incredibly efficient and was good at getting the job done quickly. Then, of course, once the hens are gassed, you've got the men to pick up the carcasses. But of course, we've got 1.5 million eggs, which have been laid since the hens were under suspicion. We packed a lot of them onto fibre trays. Our robots didn't like that, so we gave up and put them back onto plastic. And, excuse me, these eggs subsequently had to be dumped, and absolutely everything on the farm that was not fit to be washed, disinfected, and cleaned sufficiently was put in that huge bonfire. Considering how hard it was to get fibre trays at that time in the industry, it was a bit hard burning that amount of fibre. So moving on, under advice from Livetec again to try and find out where the weak points might be in our farm, we've made the chimneys rather hard to perch on now. You need to be a pretty hardcore pigeon to want to sit on that. Every possible entry point on the farm has now been fenced off. We laid 56 loads of concrete. I mean, we had a lot of concrete. We now have a hell of a lot of concrete. And we also moved on to other expenses. We've laid a lot of asphalt. We're planning to lay a lot more. What we're really trying to do is to make sure that everything is as clean as physically possible, every part of the way. We've installed new barriers. Means that nobody can just rock up to a shed of any way, shape or form. All of the sites have barriers. You either have the code or you're not getting in. And then we've got automatic disinfection for vehicles. And I would say the biggest benefit with this, from my own observations, is all the farm traffic, running back and forward all day, every day, now gets disinfected. It's all right for your lorries turning up on farm, and the lorry drivers are under direction. Get your machine disinfected. But I can tell you the biggest danger on any farm is the man that's talking right here, and that's the owner, because he thinks he can do whatever he likes. So this machine here makes sure that I have to go through the barriers and I have to do what I'm told. So back to contingency planning again. The real benefits to you. That's really what I'm here to tell you about. At the start of our outbreak, we got sound advice on how all of this would progress as an infected premises. We knew what to expect and what was coming. Excuse me. We diverted the egg and feed lorries. We stopped all movements, which was essential to protect other farmers and our supply chain partners, because we're all in this together. This is not just us that's affected. And we were able to speed up the paperwork trail, which saved a full day on our farm, I would guess. And remember, wearing the commercial hat, dead hens do not get compensated for. So the quicker you can get in there, get the disease identified, and get the hens counted, or should I say the mortality counted, helps to improve your payout from compensation from the government. So in our business, I would say that was worth about £50,000 just easily, straight away. All these critical decisions, which are difficult to make, had already been made during peacetime when our heads were clear. It's very important because, believe me, when you become an IP, you really are in shock. You really don't know what way to turn. And it's quite overwhelming, actually. Planning is totally essential for your mental well-being and the recovery of your business. So that's where I'll leave it. That's what happened to us. And I'll hand you back to Julian. Thank you.
Thank you very much, James. So as you saw, we've been working with James for probably 3, 4, 5 years before this actually happened, in terms of having those contingency plans in place. And as you saw, a big pile of paper. A couple of years ago, a digital innovator came into our business and said, "Boy, you like paper, don't you?" And it was true. Everything we did was paper-based. And we started a process of looking at how can we be more efficient in delivering our contingency planning, our emergency response, our preparedness on a digital platform rather than having these very static but vitally important documentation sets, because it might be every 6 months or every 12 months that you would go back and review that and make updates. Whereas if we can now look at how we can do this electronically, then we get a much more up-to-date plan and response. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about our approach to biosecurity planning and how we've built this into a digital platform. So as we know, protecting the actual livestock, our biosecurity around the specific livestock area, is the center part of our biosecurity planning. And around that we have an intermediate area where you're changing from the dirty outside into the clean, what we hope, protected livestock area, whether that's pigs or poultry. But of course around this we're trying to reduce infection as we're getting towards the livestock. So we have our general biosecure area. It's listed down in line code and in the red tractor specifications. And at that point we just want people coming in that are important to the business. Feed lorries, egg collection, live bird collection, or chick delivery. Nobody else should be getting beyond that barrier. And this area here is the bit we need to concentrate on, not necessarily the rest of your farm. There was too much done, I think, when people were suddenly doing a knee-jerk reaction to biosecurity. Putting a sprayer about half a mile from the livestock farm is not a good response to biosecurity. So in that green area would be your house, other businesses, other parts of your farm that you just cannot keep biosecure. It's too much trouble to do that. Let's focus closely on the area, that yellow and that red area. And I'll come on in a moment to see how our app helps you do that. So when we first launched the Livetec Systems app, it was to help notify farmers of where disease was in the country. So APHA publish when a disease outbreak has occurred, and they put the declaration up on the website to say that there is a restriction zone in place of 3 kilometres, 10 kilometres. And they'll send you an email and you go and look at the website and you try and find out if you wouldn't know whether it was in Lerwick or Penzance, but you live in Nottingham. So you get a lot, especially during the height of the avian influenza outbreaks. You get a lot of notifications which were not necessarily relevant to your part of the country. So the purpose of our app was to put you on the map. We gather the data immediately. It goes up on the APHA website, and within 5 minutes you'll get a ping on your phone if you're in that zone. If it's in Lerwick and you're nowhere near that, you won't get a ping. You will be told exactly where you are. And more importantly, when that zone is lifted. One of the things that's really hard to do on the APHA website is find out when zones are lifted. Now, if you need to get a movement license for your birds or something coming in and out and off the farm, if you go through all that trouble to get the birds inspected by a vet and everything, and then actually find out you've just gone out of a zone, you sort of wasted your time. So this will tell you, importantly, when that zone is lifted. So this was the first stage of our foray into the digital sphere. Now that app's been up and running for 8 months or so now, and we've launched some new parts of it today. So if you download that app, put your farm on. We've also put up the blue tongue zones on there, and if there were a pig disease, the pig diseases would go up on there as well. So that's the first stage of the app. But now we've worked on an electronic biosecurity advisory service. So whereas we've worked with James in the past, giving him paper documents about biosecurity, and somebody comes up and we go around the farm and spend a day there looking at it, we're saying, well, how can we spread ourselves further by doing this electronically? So our biosecurity advisory service online is a little different to perhaps other people that are offering it. We are not just a checkbox thing. It's not got, I've got 16 foot dips and I change them, once a week, tick, 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 tick. It's a progression of questions that leads you through those areas that I put up before, and interrogates you, so asks you one question, and the result of that question, the answer you give will lead on to some more questioning there. And each answer gets a score. And those scores are ones that we have worked out based on our experience. We've been on over 200 IPs. We've seen where disease comes on. So in James's case, with like a fairly highly biosecure site, where was that disease coming in? Some sites you can walk into and you go, yeah, I think that's probably come through the front door. James's site, it's got in through somewhere else. So we've got that experience of over 200 IPs of where that disease might be coming in. And that's where we score these systems. So our scoring is probably a little bit harsher than maybe other systems that you might see. But what we want to be able to do is to use it as a benchmark, so you do it your first time. It will then tell you what the key points are that you might want to improve, and you can make improvements to the score as you go along. So you'll get your little dashboard and it'll tell you about your different areas on the farm and the scores within that, but also gives you advice on how to improve those scores where it really matters. So if you're looking at investing in things, it might be a better investment to buy more boots so that you can change your boots rather than an expensive spraying system or automation system. So get those fundamentals right before you get the big vanity projects going. Ultimately, it sends us little red flags, so you may even get a call from us to say, well, we've seen you filled in this, and we see you get a very low score here. Let's talk about it. Let's see how we can improve it. And potentially, we just come out to the farm and walk around with you and see it. We do quite a lot of biosecurity training on farms, so with groups of farm managers from some of the bigger companies, we actually do a walk around the farm. Rather than trying to do biosecurity training on a screen or in a classroom, we walk the farm, we talk about the areas, and we put a fresh pair of eyes on it. We ask questions. Why do you do things like this? Why are you coming through like this? And it engenders a different approach. It's changing that attitude to biosecurity rather than just looking at the structure and the checkboxes of it. Here's just an example of some of the questioning tree. I mean, this is purely about feed deliveries. I won't go into all the details of it, but it puts up these various answers. Depending on what you answer, you will get a different set of questions coming up to interrogate you a bit further. So it does go into depth, and it might take you a little while to do it, but it's something you can sit down and do at your leisure. You don't have to do it all in one go. So this is more or less what the app is looking like, if you can see those. So you start off by putting information in about your farm. You pin all your buildings using what 3 words on a map so that you've actually got locations of everything. Then you're guided through the questions about different areas of the farm. So you're asking questions about each shed. What are the systems for entering the shed? How do you run the muck belts? How do you deliver feed? How do you clean up? You know, all those things, they're all in there. And that will gradually build up a score, as you can see there. You get a score for each area, the general area, the specific areas, the buildings, the range if you have one, and it gives you an overall score. But what you can always do is make changes to the farm, go back in and see how you can improve those scores. So when we're looking at how this information can be used, obviously individual farmers can use it to benchmark and then improve biosecurity on their site. But at an enterprise level, you know, if you've got a dozen farms or something, you can use it as a management tool to see where you might want to invest in improvements in that, in those farms. Which ones are possibly more at risk from pathogen incursion than others. And then at the other end, with integrators or maybe packers, it's looking at within your supply base, say for egg collection, you could pull out the details about how you're collecting eggs from sites and seeing if there are any at-risk farms that are more risky to collect eggs from than others. So we can produce dashboards from the individual user right up to the integrator or the enterprise model. And that's what we're working with 1 or 2 companies at the moment. So what have we got coming up in the future? The next additions to the app, as I say, the EBAS, the Electronic Biosecurity Advice, is live on there now. We're going to put the emergency response plan up. That was one of the key documents in the middle of James's pack. It was a document that was probably updated once a year, and it's a piece of paper. piece of papers go out of date the minute you print them. So now we can have that emergency response plan on the app, and if you change a supplier, if you change some information, you can just go online and change it. When APHA turn up, you can hit the print button, print it out, hand it over. It will give all the details of your farm, maps and plans of the farm where everything is. We put the biosecurity plan on there. Everyone needs a biosecurity plan for their assurance scheme, so we can sit and work through the details of that written biosecurity plan. In there as well for free, which if you just download the app now, you'll get what we call the National Outbreak Plan. Gives you information about avian influenza, about the different licenses you might need if you get caught up in the zones, how the zones are described. So it distills down a load of, I was about to say boring, interesting government information into something that's that's easily readable. Again, we put in cleaning and disinfection plans. At the moment, these are on paper, but these will go up electronically, and there's a way in there you could even potentially cost what that's going to be, because cleaning and disinfection afterwards, which we didn't talk about with James, but it's an extensive process that you have to go through to the satisfaction of an animal health veterinary inspector. But we can prep all that in there. And the final piece on there, the Livetec Academy, which we're also launching today, is starting off with some online training courses about biosecurity from our point of view, from the sort of boots on the ground point of view. And again, totally product agnostic. We're not trying to sell you extra foot dips. Or in fact, I'd love to see less foot dips on farm, because every time you have a foot dip, you've got an entry point. And the fewer foot dips means you've got the fewer entry points, and it's every entry point that is bringing pathogens into the farm. But the biosecurity training has gone up on the Livetec Academy now. But we also have other things about looking how different innovations in the farm might affect in the future. So we're building that suite of training courses in there. But we also do boots on the ground training, as I mentioned before. So there's an outline of our app and how we're changing the advice we give to make it more accessible and online, and a self-service model, so that you're not having to pay for somebody to come on the farm all the time to do something. You can start work in the comfort of your sitting room, and then if you need additional help, we'll always be there to give you extra advice. So come along to the stand. We're sort of way down there a wee bit, stand 250. Have a look at a demonstration of the app and the eBAS, because it's worth having a run through. Talk to us about some of the other services, the premium services that we deliver, and more importantly, we can print you a mug with your face on. When I say your face, an avatar of your face. It's really quite fun. And also, we're beginning to, obviously, we've been known for working in poultry. We work through AI. We're now working with the National Pig Association and HDB, looking at contingency planning in pigs for if we get an African swine fever outbreak. So with that, I will stop if there are any questions. I've got 4 minutes left. So if there are any questions from the floor, I will attempt to answer them. And gratefully, James has got a question, if no, to start us off.
Julian, this is quite a hard question for you, and you might need to get your crystal ball out. We could see from what you put up on the screen earlier, we went through a bad year, then a really bad year, and now we're into relative peacetime. And I know you must be involved in some of these meetings that are going on. What's coming and when?
Yeah, I will need my crystal ball for that. There is a lot of work going on how the virus is adapting and changing, and we saw it change this last year. So a combination of less virulent in certain species of poultry, to the fact that wild birds seem to have got some immunity from it. But we're seeing less cases of dead wild birds, so they may be having some immunity. They were a huge vector for us the year before, when everybody was seeing that huge die-off in wild birds around the coast, and when they came inland, they were spreading the disease. So people are monitoring. It is being monitored, the outbreaks that are coming across Europe, whether that is going to change. Obviously, we've got worrying things in the States, where they've got this crossover into dairy cattle. Whether that version of the virus comes back through the migration. It's very difficult to tell. I'm hoping for a quiet winter because we're not seeing that. When we get that huge spike in August, September, October, we could see that coming through from May, June. Retrospectively, we can. That's not happening at the moment. So we hope if there is an outbreak, it'll be pushed back into December, which would be great for the seasonal producers if the outbreak is back into its December. But at the moment, there's nothing there that is really frightening us. But I think we've got so much data now that we can predict these things much better than we could 2 or 3 years ago. As I say, this big APHA-led epidemiological study will give us better data as it comes through. Fingers crossed. So with that, if there are no questions, come and find us. There's some people in green T-shirts and white T-shirts around. But please come back to the stand and have a chat with us if you've got any burning questions that you'd like to just raise with us. Thank you very much.